John McMullen, our 97.3 ESPN Eagles insider and national NFL columnist for FanRag Sports.com, joins us every day at this time. And John, as you were getting ready to come on here and I was scanning the headlines, I thought, oh yeah, we're going to lead with this. Chip Kelly remains unemployed after the Jaguars say no thank you. I'm sure that breaks your heart.
It's a crushing blow for Chip, how the mighty have fallen, that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to stick with Nathaniel Hackett over the once thought of genius of offensive football, Chip Kelly. It's been just a stunning fall from grace from a guy who a lot of people thought was the future of football. And now, as you mentioned, not a lot of options for him. Cal went in a different direction at the college level. He claims he wants to remain in the NFL. Bill Belichick, who is friendly with him, Josh McDaniels is staying in New England. He's already made that clear. So there's not a lot of options other than sitting out a year and checking out the landscape. And maybe that's what's needed because it's after that, how things ended so badly in Philadelphia, coupled with the worst season in San Francisco 49ers history, maybe there's got to be some time away for people to kind of forget how bad it's gotten.
Hey, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Nathaniel Hackett the son of the former coach Paul Hackett?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. It wouldn't surprise me. There's a lot of nepotism in the NFL, but I don't know that offhand. I do know he has a history with Doug Marrone dating back to
Syracuse,
I believe.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, you know, he feels comfortable. Plus, when I heard about that didn't make a lot of sense because that was going to be a huge shadow on Doug Marrone from day one. If Chip Kelly's on your staff, you can imagine how much pressure there would be, how much talk there would be if they got off to another bad start, for instance, about how quickly do you move to Chip Kelly as a potential head coaching candidate. So that's one of the things where his inability to get along with people, you know, if you think it, obviously we know what happened in Philadelphia, but even in San Francisco when at the end, Chip was claiming that Trent Baalke kind of derailed him out there. So this is a guy who's had two jobs, and he's had issues, two jobs in the NFL, and he's had issues at both stops working with people.
Yeah, well, maybe Chip Kelly just needs to take a year away from everything to reevaluate life in general. But you know, one of the biggest news of the day, John, is the Raiders have filed their paperwork. They're going to look, as long as they get approved by the NFL, other owners, to move to Las Vegas. And I was talking with Pete earlier today, John, and I was thinking about, you know, 20-some years ago, we had three teams move back then because you had the Rams and the Raiders, who both left Los Angeles, and then you had the Oilers leave Houston. And I thought about it because when I remember what I thought happening. You know, I thought, wow, the Raiders leaving Los Angeles, that's a blow for Raiders fans. Rams leaving Los Angeles, well, that stinks, but good for St. Louis. And then I thought, well, why are the Oilers leaving Houston to go where? And I kind of have that third feeling with the Raiders where I understand why they're doing it, but they're going to Las Vegas of all places.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's simple by the fact that they're getting a brand new stadium, state of the art, and it's going to be part publicly funded, and that's what it's all about. I mean, anybody who's been to the Oakland Coliseum knows it's an antiquated structure. That's the reason San Diego's
That's a nice way of putting it, John.
Now. Yeah, exactly. That's the reason the Chargers are gone. So, you know, we see this landscape, and you see the new stadium. Obviously, Dallas, everyone talks about how beautiful that is, and it is. And you see the new stadium in Minneapolis and the one in Atlanta that's coming up is supposed to be the best of the bunch. So when you see these new stadiums in the landscape and you have other organizations who are playing in these outdated facilities. They're not going to stick with the status quo no matter what, and it comes down to a decision. Do you want to be do you want to get involved with the NFL? Do you want to be sort of a partner in keeping a team in your particular city, or do you not? And there are some cities like Las Vegas that will bend over backwards, and there are other cities like San Diego and Oakland who put their foot down and say, no, we're not going to. We always talk about that term, subsidized billionaires. And depending on your political bent, you might be on one side of the fence or the other. But in the reality stage of things, it's competition. And if Mark Davis or Dean Spanos have another city that's willing to ante up what they want, well, unfortunately, you're going to lose out in the end. And the problem is for cities that do it, you mentioned all those movements, Josh. Think about it. Los Angeles goes 20 years without a team. Now they have two over a 2-year span, and they're going to have this giant stadium. You talk about Houston. All of a sudden, they build a new stadium and get the Texans back. You saw it in Cleveland. They lose the first incarnation of the Browns to Baltimore, and then they spend the money to get the new stadium, to get the new team. So it seems like nobody learns from history. That's for certain.
Yeah, everybody goes back to the old X, right?
Yeah, exactly. When obviously San Diego being the last team to move, obviously most recent, you think about 56 years in San Diego, and they've never been able to win. That's fine and dandy, but there's history there. You saw some of the clips of people that grew up with the Chargers crying, and look, I'm the first to say, if you're going to cry over a football team, you probably need to take stock of your life and get some other interest. But nonetheless, it means a lot to local cities, and it means a lot to local fans. And you can argue both sides of it. I understand both sides of it, but if you're only going to kick the can down the road and end up getting the stadium and spending the money for a new stadium anyway, only to get another team, whether it's 10 or 15 years, and then you lose the tradition. I mean, 56 years is a tradition that generations have grown up with a particular team, and now it's just gone.
So, John, moving forward, Vegas, as long as the NFL owners approve it, is going to get an NFL team. This is a city that has never had a major pro franchise, and now they're going to have two in a span of a few years. They're getting the new NHL team, and now a traditional NFL team is coming to town. How do you think this is going to change Las Vegas?
Well, it's interesting. Las Vegas is such a weird market because there's so few locals, and it's so based on tourism. So it's going to be interesting to see, probably more so for the hockey team than the football team, because football games tend to be events, and it's not as big as an issue. But in hockey, where you have 40 games a year at home, and you got it, people have to show up consistently year after year after year. It's going to be interesting to see how that holds up because of the nature of the city itself. And another way, though, it helped with football stadium, because other than maybe Orlando, if they ever decided to get an NFL team and they just redid the Citrus Bowl and they're going to have the Pro Bowl there, there's not a bigger tourism destination in the country. So they have the ability to sort of tack on the money to hotel taxes, and the locals that are there aren't really dinged to build this gorgeous new stadium. So in that way, they had a pretty big advantage.
By the way, according to recent consensus figures, Las Vegas' current population is a little over 603,000 people. In comparison, San Francisco has 837,000 residents, and San Diego has 1.352 million. So Vegas, while it's not...
but understand the Bay Area as a whole is much larger than that. And I think it's the fifth largest market in the country.
Right. If you combined Oakland, San Jose, Jose, and San Francisco, Palo Alto, it's you're reaching into the almost 4 million area.
Yeah. So they're drawing from a significantly bigger pool of people in the Bay Area than they will be from Las Vegas.
Whereas Vegas is basically in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly. And the Raiders have been one of those teams that have always had sort of the big national following. So they're right there, not quite up to the Cowboys or the Packers standards, but probably just underneath. And you start talking about Pittsburgh and probably the Raiders are in that category as franchises and fan bases that travel well. So it's kind of a national fan base. And I think they'll be fine. If it does get approved, I think they'll be fine anywhere. It's always sad when you see teams lose that tradition. As I said, in Oakland's case, though, they left. This is the second time they're leaving. So certainly Oakland has not learned from its mistakes.
Couple other interesting NFL-related news stories circulating around. Let's first start with the Seahawks. So Pete Carroll, probably in a very bad use of judgment, decided to admit on a radio show in Seattle that he didn't disclose a knee injury that Richard Sherman had for half the season. And the reports are coming out that it looks like the NFL, if they go through their whole procedure, they could actually take away the Seahawks' second-round pick. To which my reaction, John, is, right, but if it was the Patriots, they'd probably take away the first-round pick.
Well, they probably would. But some people would say, the problem with the NFL is there's no consistency, and that's where you have this issue. And Patriots fans are certainly upset because of what happened in Deflategate and Tom Brady's suspension and knocking the draft pick, but also remember – a lot of that stemmed from the fact the rest of the league thought the league went easy on them as far as Spygate went. So the lack of consistency is always an issue. And when you talk about injury reports, it's such a nebulous thing. You're right. I mean, if Pete Carroll doesn't say anything, it's not an issue. So the fact that he's the head coach of the team and says it public is basically shooting yourself in the foot. So that's a big mistake. But as a whole, the league went to a less stringent injury report policy this season. And when you talk about them scaling back the probable designation, for instance, and making everybody questionable. So they've kind of encouraged this less, if anything, less reporting of significant injuries or trying to feign people. And you see it all over in this league. People hate talking about injuries. Chip Kelly specifically when he was here, he would talk before practice and say, I haven't talked to the trainers yet, so you can never get anything as far as injuries. So in that way, Andy Reid and Doug Peterson are kind of nice to deal with because they always come out and talk about injuries first and give you at least some information.
Couple other news items coming up and around in almost a backhanded help to the New York Jets. It looks like their owner, Woody Johnson, is going to be named the United States' new ambassador to the United Kingdom. For those who went for reference purposes,
Rule Britannia, Britannia rules the wave. Sorry, just had to jump in there.
for reference purposes, Mr. Rooney of the Steelers was given an ambassadorship during the Obama administration. So this is certainly not the first time an NFL owner has been tapped for a job like this. But it almost seems like, John, this may be a backhanded help to the Jets franchise.
I don't know about that, but I joked, one of my friends is a big Jets fan. I joked to him when he finally won one by getting, because the Jets are such a disaster. But, good for him. He gets to be the ambassador to the UK. And if you want to be an ambassador, that's probably one of the best ones to get. So congratulations to him. Yeah, I don't know. If anybody's upset about that, they've got issues because, but you know how we are in the political world. Everyone's going to jump on the fact that he's rich and he's a billionaire and Donald Trump's a billionaire, yada, yada, yada. But good for Woody Johnson.
Today, Jordy Nelson was at practice. No pads, though, as he's still recovering from the rib injuries. Do you think this is a positive sign that he'll be able to play on Sunday?
No, I do not. He's not going to play. I don't care what they say. I don't care what they do. Even if they wanted to put him out there as sort of a decoy, I think it would be not the best decision in the world, basically because Aaron Rodgers has proven doesn't matter who's out there. He can get them involved and get them the football. So to just put a star player out there to act as a decoy, because he's going to be nowhere near 100% or nowhere near optimum efficiency, would be silly from their perspective. So I don't think there's any chance he's going to play. I think the bigger issue is Davante Adams, who didn't practice on Wednesday, and Geronimo Allison, he was held out of practice as well. But those guys are going to play. And to me, the bigger issue is how healthy are they? Because at some point, as good as Rodgers is, as good as he's been, you keep taking those kinds of dings at the wide receiver position, it's going to affect you. And this might be the week, because if the Packers are going to win this game, it's going to be a shootout. Atlanta's going to score against that defense. So if they score 34, you're going to need 35. And you need somebody out there to catch the football.
By the way, Sean, it's interesting because Mike McCarthy came out and told the media, referencing Davante Adams, Jordy Nelson, and Geronimo Allison. For those who don't know, Adams has the ankle, Allison has the hamstring. McCarthy came out and said that if this wasn't a playoff game, those guys probably wouldn't play Sunday.
Yeah, that's the point, and that's the point. There's no like I said, there's no question Nelson's not going to be ready. The other guys, yeah. It's a Week 7 game. They're probably not going to play, but they're going to go out there because they have to play. And it could be an instance where, Aaron Rodgers makes you remember that Jeff Janis is still in this league, or Trevor Davis, he makes him into a one-day star. He's that good, where he's able to do that. But again, when you're facing a team like Atlanta, who's so high-powered, and I think I said yesterday on the show, when you see Ladarius Gunther traveling with Dez Bryant because he's your best cornerback, that is like the Philadelphia Eagles would laugh at that. That's how bad that is. And if anything, Julio Jones is better than Dez Bryant. So that kind of tells you what Jones and Mohamed Sanu and Taylor Gabriel, they're just going to run laps around the Packers cornerbacks, and they're going to have to score points, as I said.
Couple more quick things before we let you go, John. Ladarius Green, who did practice yesterday, did not practice today. He was downgraded, so it looks like that temporary sign of hope of him coming play this Sunday has just suddenly vanished and gone away.
Yeah. Well, I think I said yesterday on the show as well that I'm sure the Steelers are not counting on him because they haven't been able to count on him all season. In a lot of ways, the Steelers are still in the AFC Championship game, obviously, and if they're not capable, if they don't get it done and they don't win it, in a lot of ways this is going to be a what-if season in Pittsburgh, because as good as they are offensively, if you think about it, if they would have had Martavis Bryant all season, if Green would have been healthy all season, how good that offense would have been with those guys out there. But yeah, I mean, he would have been a huge difference maker, because he's a heck of a receiver down the middle of the field.
And John, finally, one more thing. Packers Director of Football Operations Elliot Wolf has removed his name from consideration for the 49ers vacant general manager position. It looks like that possibly the Packers are lining Wolf up to be the next guy to replace Ted Thompson. And meanwhile, Brian Gutekunst, I hope I said his name right, is the new favorite for the 49ers job.
God bless you.
According to Tom Pelissero.
Yeah, I think it's going to be him, or it's going to be George Patton, who's the assistant GM in Minnesota. I think it's one of those two guys that is going to be the new GM there. And I think it has to do, they're going the opposite direction, obviously. They're going sort of the Seattle direction, where Pete Carroll, the head coach, kind of handpicked the general manager, or even Kansas City for that matter, with Andy Reid and John Dorsey. So Kyle Shanahan is probably going to have a hand in who gets that job, who he's most comfortable with. I'm not sure I like that setup, but it looks like that's the way they're going to go.
John McMullen, our 97.3 ESPN.com Eagles insider, also covers the NFL nationally for FanRag Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen. John will get more into the breakdown of the matchups of the NFL championship games tomorrow. Appreciate you joining us.
Hey, thank you, guys.